Welcome back. Yes, this borders on the electoral process, dealing with the electoral fraud, ensuring at least a lot of credibility or a higher level of credibility is ascribed to our leadership recruitment process, talking about the elections. We've got Mr. Matthias Emeribe, who is a legal practitioner, joining us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
That particular judgment, wow, it did raise a lot of questions, a lot of hope in several other quarters as to can we say that, wow, finally, okay, we should be on the verge, judiciary, the presidency, INEC. Do you see that, what kind of impact, first of all, do you think this judgment will have on our elections, either for those who are participating, those who are carrying out electoral, returning officer positions moving forward?
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain. Before I answer that question, I have to make some very important remarks concerning the judgment that, took place in Akwa Ibom concerning the professor that was convicted. I want to first of all express, because it gives hope, particularly in the nation, when this appears to be the first, in fact, it's a landmark decision and the first in the annals of this history. Since 1922, we've been having election. So I want to first thank the president who has made this a possibility, because if he has not cooperated or given effect to his anti-corruption vibe, this probably would not have happened. And then I want to thank equally the chairman of INEC too, who has also allowed what you may call some form of energy, some form of newness to come into INEC so as to give it some form of credibility, irrespective of the electoral reform that has not taken place. And most importantly, I want to equally thank the judiciary in Akwa Ibom State that has lived up to its billing as being independent. And again, I believe that even the executive in that state too would have played their part in making it to come to pass. And but most importantly,
you're thanking all of them for doing their jobs.
Yes, I am, because it gives hope. It gives hope, and it encourages others, to equally want to act the same way for purpose of we getting Nigeria right, as it were. And the man who had made it happen, talking about the resident electoral commissioner for Akwa Ibom State, Mike Igini. I mean, his achievements and the things he has done for purposes of redefining our electoral process to get it right cannot be overemphasized. I mean, it is clear that his doggedness and his zeal to be more patriotic and, in fact, to make Nigeria work has made this a possibility. So, now, coming back to the effect of the judgment, with all due respect, it is clear that it will send the signal that, look, it is no longer business as usual, which we used to have before now. Because one, by that judgment, first, something became clear. One, apart from the fact that, yes, the professor, was convicted and sentenced, so to say, meaning that there's no sacred cow, it has also shown that INEC has the power to prosecute, provided there are offenses which fall within its domain. That is talking about the electoral offenses as provided therein. So the court's judgment has vested power to mean that even if the police or any security agency act in a manner that is not consistent with the electoral process, with an intent to subvert, INEC, with the power vested in it, can still proceed against them. And it equally shows that even if an elected member, maybe he has been confirmed to be one who is now in the House or in the Senate or whatever, except for the governor or the president, he can still, or that person can still be prosecuted, provided there's an electoral fraud that has been established to have been committed. INEC now has power to deal with that electoral fraud, because that is the only way to sanitize the system. Very well.
INEC knew.
Well, we do respect going by the Electoral Act, so to say, because for the first time, the amended Electoral Act is the one that appears to have vested same in the in INEC, though it has been there. The problem is that there hasn't been need for them to test it, number one. And secondly, the police had not been assisted.
Just a moment, Mr. Miribe, just a moment. He said there hadn't been a need to test the power. Is that what he said?
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it takes political will.
Political will.
Now, depending on who is in the saddle. For instance, the current INEC chairman, if he are not given what you call the freedom for the resident electoral commissioner to do his work, it probably would have been difficult. And like I said, it depends on who is in the saddle of the state. Then the president in question that came up with the issue of the anti-corruption drive. Because like I said, since 1922, such has never happened. So if it's happening now, it is because you have looked at the man up there who says, I want this thing to happen, and it's happening.
Isn't that a culpability on the part of government? If you say, because, I mean, you started by thanking people for doing their jobs for which they were recruited and they are getting paid. Yeah. Now, everyone is getting paid for doing the things for which you are thanking them. It means that every civil servant should get a thank you from their bosses, which are the people every day. But that's beside the point. Now, there are laws. There are so many things that are in the laws that should be done by INEC that hasn't been done. And now you are saying that this one is the first since 1922. Gratifying to know. What's the assurance we have that there are no political... okay, maybe I should ask you that way. Would you say that there were political considerations that even facilitated this whole process in the first place? Because hitherto, it could have been done, but it never was done.
Yes, let me tell you, with due respect, you may have, the nature of the politics we play in Nigeria has always given rise to conclusions when actions are not in line with the expectation or with as provided by the law. Then it opens up for different or varying interpretation. And that is why we talk about political will and others. But I can tell you here that with what we have just experienced and with what we have seen, like I said, it depends on the personality in question who we want to give effect to what the law says. Go ahead.
On the personality of anyone to execute the law. No. If the rule of law, just a moment, if the rule of law should be given teeth, should it depend on any individual as opposed to the institution?
I agree that the individual shouldn't be the determinant point. But let me say something here. The truth remains that if we fail, with due respect, to acknowledge the role which individuals play, that is why it goes back to our recruitment process. Because if the background from which we are bringing those who are coming into office is suspect, it has the effect of rubbing off on the entire system as well. That we are having it in perhaps in some other crime, well, it's not unconnected with the fact that the background and the orientation of those personalities are taken into consideration. So you cannot wish out such, as it were, so to say. So while I agree with you that individuals shouldn't be this, the ultimate goal, but you cannot wish it away, it matters. If not, we'll end up getting it wrong. If we have a system, because that a system is working, is because the people that consider that system are people, when you look back to their background, they have a solid background that has made them to achieve or to get to that particular position. Therefore, they can, in combination, bring about the system working well. But when you have the wrong set of people, when we talk of system, what is the system? Is it not when you have the right, the people in question that will make the system to work or not to work? Just now you finished about the issue of security, as it were. And things that are obvious and clear, we are all seeing it. Why? Because people have failed to do what they ought to do. And it goes back to the recruitment process, to the leadership process, as it were. So if the leadership process is wrong, it will rub off negatively on the entire society. And that means that we, as a people, we are under obligation to interrogate, and very seriously too, the leaders that we are bringing to come and lead us. If we end up having the wrong ones, unfortunately, we may before we get it right, a lot of damage would have been done.
Basically saying that, I mean, leaders don't operate in isolation.
Yes.
You have leaders because they are followers, and you have followers
Exactly.
to have leaders. Now, this professor was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment after he was found guilty of fraudulent manipulation of election results. Yeah. Now, it would have been a different case entirely if he was contested, if he was vying for position in that election. But he was just an official in that election, which brings me to the point of not working in isolation. So there were candidates in that election that vied for the election. I mean, he didn't manipulate the election for himself, for example, because his name was not on the ballot paper. And, you know, speaking about one of the INEC witnesses who spoke during the course of the case, he says that his own results showed that the APC scored over 10,000 votes, while the PDP had just over 25,000 votes. While the accused declared that APC polled just over 15,000 as opposed to the 10,000, while PDP polled 20,000 opposed to the 25,000 that his own, that's the INEC witness, had. So there were candidates in this election, but all we saw was a conviction for the INEC official. Is that right? Is that okay?
Well, your analysis has already said it all. For an election where officially, and that should be, I think, Oro Kanam, where the result there for the PDP officially has it at 21,153. I mean, 123. And for the APC candidate, it has it 10,534. Only for there to be what you may call a substitute or how do you call it, interpolation of results. Or better still, removing 5 from 25, placing it in front of 10, that's removing that 0 from that 10, placing it in front of 2. So in other words, the 25 became 20, the 10 became 15. In other words, the 25 became 20,123. The 10 became 15,534. Now, what else? And meanwhile, in that line, the entire result, that's the total score, remains the same. To the extent that it will take what you may call rocket science, or should I say, a diligent mind to detect what has been done there. Because if you do the total calculation or tabulation, it will still give you the same result. So that in itself, I mean, clearly, I don't know what other way to put it. And even in the trial proper, the question was put, because the position the professor that had been convicted was saying was that it was an oral statement that was given to him, so he thought that they said 15. So he said, look, with all due respect, he was asked to now tell us the difference between 10,000 and 15,000 plus. Are they the same? Do they sound the same? So what I'm simply saying is that he could not have any reason whatsoever other than the fact that he intended to do what? To sabotage and to kill the clarity and the honesty that the electoral process ought to have.
But did he maybe do this on his own volition? Did he act in isolation?
Clearly, if he did what he did to add a figure, because what it means is that he has increased the figure of one party and then reduced the figure of the other. Now, what would be the natural intent or thought when such happens? It is to the effect that he's aiding and abetting a certain political party.
So what do you make of both political parties, I'm talking about the APC and the PDP, disowning him then?
Well, you know, they said failure is an orphan. You know, in this case, having been found guilty, even those who are his sponsors have decided to keep aloof. Because the danger in admitting is to now be an accomplice in the action that took place.
Justice has been served, really.
Of course.
Without getting the so-called accomplice, because, I mean, as you have said clearly, he wasn't acting alone.
For this purpose, the point is that when you say he wasn't acting alone, now, one thing stands out clear. Because of the powers of INEC, they are dealing with their own. It's like an in-house cleansing. That's what you just experienced. Now, pertaining to this conviction, it is now left for perhaps the other, what we call prosecuting agencies or authorities, to now proceed, to now trace those who were behind the official doing what he did, so to say.
One of the lawyers there, while just before we came to you, was talking about the fact that, well, certain things have been done, was suggesting that there might be an appeal. If I wanted, some of their case in court was that INEC has no power to investigate criminal allegations. Is that correct?
You know, the funniest part of this issue is that, well, he's within his right to appeal when he's not satisfied with the judgment. Now, if he goes on that trajectory, what it will therefore mean is that because first we must understand that INEC is more like a special purpose vehicle for election matters, so to speak. And to that extent, the Electoral Act has donated it with powers to prosecute. Now, on the issue of whether they can investigate or not, so to speak, it is funny that when they put up their in-house investigation to come out with a prima facie case, they have not said that the man is guilty, but there's a prima facie case that has enabled them to say, court, please tell us whether by this finding or by this investigation, this man is guilty or not. That's simply what they have done, and they have submitted it. Now, to think otherwise is simply to say that an organization like maybe NAFDAC, after all, NAFDAC does investigation and prosecute. An organization like NDLA, they investigate and they prosecute. An organization like the Customs, they investigate and they prosecute. An organization like the Immigration, they investigate and they prosecute. These are bodies that are set up by statute, just like INEC. So to now begin to now proceed on that line or trajectory is only, chasing shadows. And in any event, the ultimate question is that how has this action prejudiced the interests of the professor? Can he tell us how it has prejudiced? Is it that what they said or what was found or what the court reached was not correct, or what was presented before the court was not exactly what he himself did? He admitted that he did say. So how has it prejudiced him? How can he now come and begin to now, sounding hot and cold at the same time? In law, his equity will not allow you to approbate and reprobate at the same time. You can't.
You know, this is something that a lot of Nigerians have been looking forward to, that all electoral offenders be prosecuted no matter whose ox is gored. And this brings us to this statement, which was a speech, actually, which was read by the chairman of INEC in December 2019. He was talking to Rex in Abuja. I'll just take some part of it because it was a bit lengthy. He did say that at the moment, they are saddled with the responsibility of prosecuting electoral offenders. They have no capacity to arrest offenders and conduct investigation, without which successful prosecution is impossible. Over the years, we have worked closely with Nigeria Police since 2015. We received a total of 149 case files, including 16 cases arising from 2019 general election. And then he says that many of these cases, in fact, he says, even where the commission recorded the most successful prosecution of electoral offenders following the violence witnessed in a by-election in Kano in 2016, it is unclear how many of the 40 offenders sentenced to prison with the option of fine actually spent time in jail. The fine was paid presumably by their sponsor. These are quotes from his comments. So he's talked about the fact that something needs to be done to ensure these kind of cases, more of these kind of cases are recorded. What then how should we approach this such that we don't have to wait on anybody's political will to do their jobs? What should we do to empower people, INEC officials, to do their jobs?
This judgment, that is why we call it a landmark judgment. In other words, the law has spoken. Let me just put it that way. And if the law has spoken, it means that the current state of the law today is that INEC has the power to prosecute. So in respect of all of those cases you mentioned, what it will simply mean is that the police
You know, when you were thanking all of those people, and we thought, look, if the laws were framed in such a manner as to which if any of INEC officials, if any agency sees certain things, they have the powers to prosecute, will we have time or will we be thanking people who allow prosecution to happen? That's the point I'm trying to make.
No, listen, first of all, when you thank, you are not thanking because you just wanted to thank or because you feel that, of course, it's their duty, so why do we need to what? Thank them? No. I am not doing that because of, look.
I get the point. Doesn't it suggest that if they had done certain things, those persons in those offices, this prosecution might have been jeopardized?
Please, let me get your question very well.
If those persons who at least you had given credence to, if they had taken some contrary action, wouldn't this have been jeopardized?
Well, I agree. It may not. Like I said, it still depends on who is in the office that wants things to happen. Because if you have those, somebody who, of course, had a conviction and had not soiled his hands, and he wants to do the right thing, it may be difficult for those in office to change him and say, look, we want you to go this way. Maybe the worst case scenario is that if you want to influence him too much, he will just resign, as it were. So, but like I said, there's always a starting point. This is starting. This is the starting point. Yeah.
Dealing with in the event that such things happen again. So, how do we even ensure that it doesn't happen again altogether? And that's talking about recruiting people for electoral assignments, such as this professor that has been caught and jailed so far. Is there a question mark about how INEC recruits their men? Is there a vulnerability that was missed that should be blocked?
Let me tell you, if this kind of action is not taken by way of this prosecution and conviction, you give room for, notwithstanding, if you like, go and employ an angel, because consequences does not follow every wrong. Therefore, it gives room for them to do as they like. But as long as consequences follow every wrong, the tendency for those people to do it will not be. In fact, it's either it's going to be reduced or eliminated.
What about the other case? What are the chances of what do you see happening in that case?
The truth is, I won't preempt the court. The matter is there. It's sub judice. So let the court do its work. So as a lawyer, I will be too forward to say that I want to begin to comment on. This one has finished, and we have seen how the court arrived at its conclusion. So, but in respect of the one that is coming up, I will not be in a position to make any comments because it's presently in court and it's sub judice.
Well, we'll see if it deters other, who knows, electoral officials from doing several other things because, this professor having achieved the highest academic position, and now this, I'm not sure anybody wants his or her name tarnished in this manner. We thank you, Mr. Matthias Emeribeh, legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
All right, Michael, I think there's some comments. Can you go ahead with them?
Indeed, Chamberlain was seeing a few from, this one is from Comrade Francis Iwedike Osedume, talking about insecurity now. He says, we have the capacity to nail banditry, kidnappings, and all forms of insurgency in Nigeria, just that federal government does not have the political will to do the needful. A sad reality.
Well,
the second one then, Professor Nakena says, rejigging national security. The national security architecture must now be primed in a way to allow state access to recruit and manage their internal security. Political and ludicrous sponsorship of criminality must be abhorred, and those involved must be prosecuted openly as a deterrent. I don't even want to go into that argument. I don't even want to go into that because we heard the president say there are certain individuals. We've heard a governor say there are certain individuals that are known, have been identified. Who are they? As I said, I don't want to go into it.
Food for thought. Well, that's the show for today, everyone. Thank you for watching. I am Kayode Okikere.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Please do stay safe and have a wonderful day.
Well, you know you can't name names, or else the lawyer will tell you. They'll sue you.
Oh, yeah, but you can say your name,
Not
right?
me. I said, who are
Defamation.
they? Let the governor speak. Let the president mention names.
All right. I wonder what. I wish you could go back to Mr. America and ask him the implication of that. All right. Thank you for watching as well. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
And I'm Al Green Yusuf. Thank you.